it's Mrs. Haas. Come on up, buddy. And Marvin, sit. Let me shake. Good dog. And we are getting ready to read the Wright brothers. Before we get started, I would like you to pause for just a moment and chat with a family member about any connections that you can make to our field trip to Carillon Park. Remember when we visited the bike shop that belonged to the Wright brothers, and we also were able to go into a hangar where they had the real life flyer that Orville and Wilbur used to fly for the very first time. So just make some connections that you can to a family member, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. The Wright Brothers by Mamie Goodson and illustrated by Giuliano Ferri. When you open up to the cover page, you'll notice that it's titled The Wright Brothers, but over here on the left-hand side we have Orville, and on the right-hand side we have Wilbur. So take a moment to notice their characteristics and talk about how do they look similar, how do they look different. Maybe you could come up with some questions about which one's older, which one's younger. Just think about those Wonder Wheel questions, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. Here we go. In the past, people just traveled by land or by sea. Notice in the illustration the different ways that people can travel by land. Maybe you can point to a few of them. How are people traveling by land? And then see if you can find how are people traveling by sea. I noticed the boat or the ferry back there. Go ahead and turn the page. But two brothers dreamed of crafting a machine that could fly. Wilbur says, "See how the birds soar in the wind, Orville?" And Orville says, "Who says we can't do that, Wilbur?" So it sounds like they're believing in themselves together. That's awesome. Notice the bicycle shop over here. That looks very similar to the bicycle shop that we visited at Carillon Park. Pages 4 and 5. The two men learned as much as they could about flying. They read about gliders that got power from the wind. With bent wings, gliders could lift. They could soar, but they were hard to steer in the wind. Orville says, "First, we must craft a glider too." And Wilbur says, "But we must come up with a plan to steer it in the wind." We've heard that word crafted before, similar to crafted in the wind. That's the title of one of the geodes that we've read. See if you can make a connection to what Orville is saying, where he says, "First, we must craft a glider too." What do you think that word craft means? And then second, maybe you could chat with someone in your family about why is it important when Wilbur suggested that they must come up with a plan? Why is it important to come up with a plan before you just go ahead and create an airplane? Why do you think that that would be wise of them? Chat with somebody about that real quick. And then we're gonna get started on pages 6 and 7. For help, they looked to the birds. Orville says, "See this? By tilting one wing up and one wing down, the birds can steer." And Wilbur says, "We can twist our glider's wings. Then we can steer too." So how were the birds helpful in them creating their plan? How did the birds help them to create their plan? I notice that they are observing. They are observing the birds. The two men drafted plans. As a test, they crafted a small glider. They flew it like a kite. A tug on the strings sent it soaring this way or that. But could they steer it from inside the glider up in the sky? So this must be a part of their plan, but they're thinking, I wonder, how are we going to get from this step to the final step where we're steering the glider from inside? That's a big step that they have to take, and they're wondering how they're going to do that. Orville says, we must have a spot with lots of wind. It must have soft sand for landing. Wilbur, I have just the spot. Where do you think they might go if they are looking for a place with lots of wind and soft sand? Think about where we get the most wind. We talked about earlier how we get the most wind in a place where the land meets the water. So where do you think they're going to go where land and water touch? If you're thinking a beach or by the shore, then I think you might have the right idea. Let's find out. They set out for the sand dunes of Kitty Hawk. There, they tested a big glider over and over in the blowing wind. With each crash, they mended it. Then they sent it back up. Now, Wilbur was all set. We've talked about that word mended. What do you think it means? I noticed the suffix ed, meaning it happened in the past. They mended it. The base word is mend. What does it mean to mend something? With each crash, they mended it. If you're thinking fixed or repaired, then I think you have the right idea. They fixed it. They repaired it. Orville says, all set to fly. And Wilbur says, say it with me, yes. Pages 12 and 13. He went soaring over hills of sand, tilting the wings up and down like a bird. It was just a quick trip, lasting seconds. But with each trip up, they learned more about soaring on the wind. How interesting. It was just a quick trip. It only lasted seconds. Are they going to give up, or are they going to believe in themselves and keep going? Let's see. Wilbur says, now we can steer from the air. We must fix the rest. Is Marvin barking? Marvin. Orville says, the wings... I'll wait for him to stop. Hey, you're okay. You're okay. Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry. One of our neighbors was walking outside, and Marvin always gets excited when he sees the neighbors. Hey, buddy, can you sit down? Okay, here we go. We are going to... Take a look. Hey, can you sit down, please? We're reading to the class. Can you please sit down? Okay, sorry about that. We are on page, we'll just repeat page 13. So Wilbur says, now we can steer from the air. We must fix the rest. And Orville says, the wings must get more lift. Let's run some tests. So it sounds like part of their plan now is to create some tests to see if the plane is working. So let's find out. In 1903, they would put on a motor. Then they would soar over the land, by the sea, in the very first airplane. How inspiring, man. They make me feel so inspired because they believed in something that had never been created before. And instead of giving up and saying, I can't do that, they believed in themselves and they challenged one another to be their very best. And I think that's inspiring and amazing. Let's go ahead and follow along with the more page. Here we go. On December 14th, 1903, the Wright brothers tossed a coin. The winner would be the first to fly in their motorized airplane. After years of experimenting, the brothers were ready to test their new plane design in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Wilbur won the toss, but unfortunately, he oversteered the plane and crashed into a dune. The brothers spent several days repairing the plane. On a cold and blustery morning 3 days later, it was Orville's turn. He kept the plane in the air for 12 seconds and traveled 120 feet. He became the first person to fly a powered airplane successfully. Later in the day, Wilbur flew for 59 seconds and traveled 852 feet. Then, a strong gust of wind rolled the plane over. The damage to the plane ended the brothers' flying season for the year, but they still had made history. How amazing and how inspiring. And it sounds like the first time when they flew the plane, it only flew 120 feet, and later in the day when Wilbur flew it, it flew 852 feet. That's over 700 feet further when Wilbur had the opportunity to fly. So that is so amazing and so inspiring. I do have a couple of challenges for you today with our story, The Wright Brothers. Your first challenge is this book is filled with words that have the suffix ing. But instead of just writing those words down today, what I would like you to do is find any words that have a suffix ing. I want you to write out the entire word. I want you to circle the suffix ing and then underline that base or that root word. So let me give you an example. I'm going to start on, well, you know what? I just opened up to page 2. And on page 2, I noticed that it says crafting, crafting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the word crafting, C-R-A-F-T-I-N-G. I'm going to circle the suffix ing. And then I'm left with the base word or the root word craft. So I'm going to underline craft. I'm going to circle ing. Now, of course, go ahead and mark up those words like you normally would by underlining the blends. But see how many suffix ing words that you can find inside of this story. There's lots of them, so see how many you can find. Your second challenge is to come up with a list of questions that you have for Orville and Wilbur Wright. So if you were able to ask them any questions, I want you to see if you can come up with 3 to 5 questions. So 3, 4, or 5 questions that you would like to ask Wilbur and Orville Wright. Think about our Wonder Wheel question words. Who, what, when, where, why, or how. And make sure, of course, if you're writing a question, you end with a question mark. You got it. And you always begin with a capital letter. So enjoy that challenge. Send me a picture or let me know how that challenge goes. And I can't wait to talk to you guys soon. Have a wonderful day. I miss you so much. Marvin and I will see you later. Bye.